As we continue to emerge from the pandemic, our pilots are more than ready to move forward. And our union continues to expand its activities. A sure sign of this, just like this meeting, is that more and more business is being conducted in person. In the past few months, we've hosted a HIMSS conference, along with the safety, training, jump seat, and pilot assistant, or security councils, all meeting in person. As you heard Captain Beat discuss, despite the pandemic, our strategic objectives have not faltered. Growing our union membership is a shining example of our success. Currently, as Joe has said, votes are underway at 2 air carriers where pilots who recognize the value of benefits of our union are exercising their right to organize and collectively bargain. Yesterday, the voting period ended, as Joe said, for IARO, with 70% of its pilots voting in favor to join this union. It's just amazing. Cargo Jet, Amerijet, Western Global, IARO now. It kind of reminds me of the movie Field of Dreams and the line that was in there. If you build it, they will come. Under Joe's leadership, we have collectively built a strong trades union, one that supports and protects our members and their families each and every day. During my report this afternoon, I will share the union's recent developments and efforts internationally. I'll also talk about the great strides of our air safety organization and touch on the growth of the ALPA PAC. I want to start by highlighting an important and beneficial development for the United States pilots. Late last year, a new entrant, Part 121 U.S. carrier called Waltzing Matilda Aviation, submitted a proposal to the United States Department of Transportation stating that they were a U.S. corporation. However, in their application, they stated that they would only have a Canadian base with Canadian pilots and plan to fly into the United States, then operate around our domestic system, and then return home to Canada. In addition, since their business model called for a low-cost operation, they asked the FAA to waive the first officer qualification rules for Canadian pilots. It's incredible. Think of the gall of this company with that application. After we objected, ALPA and Waltzing Matilda had fruitful discussions, and the new carrier has now agreed that only U.S. pilots based in the United States will be flying their aircraft. Moreover, Waltzing Matilda has agreed that these conditions should be included in the Department of Transportation's operating authority. Enshrining these labor commitments in Waltzing Matilda's aviation certificate is consistent with the Biden administration's proactive role in promoting the interests of U.S. workers and services as a valuable precedent that the Department of Transportation should consider actual employment of U.S. workers to be in the public interest. We are highly optimistic that a favorable action will be forthcoming from the Department of Transportation on this issue. In addition to this, on the international front, the union has responded to the application for a foreign air authority at the Department of Transportation by a company called Wizz Air, a low-cost Hungarian airline, which has demonstrated extreme anti-union behavior, a culture of fear, and poor record of complying with court orders. Wizz culture, as defined by their management team, expects pilots not to be fatigued, work on their days off, and never be sick. ALPA and many other pilot unions have asked the Department of Transportation to hit the pause button on the Wizz Air application and hold formal talks with the Europeans over our deep concern with Wizz Air's fitness to fly. Wizz Air also hires pilots to self-employment contracts. I got my chance to see the first one recently. The contracts state the service provider, that's the pilot, the service provider is not an employee of Wizz Air. The service provider must have their own liability insurance and must submit to medical examinations, including x-rays and diagnostics tests at any time. And finally, the service provider will be guaranteed 2 days off a month. It's unbelievable. How can a company like that expect to have any safety management system in place with voluntary pilot reporting? It's ridiculous. That's what we're telling the department needs to look at. And we're also telling them that they need to engage with the Europeans and EASA and really take a look what's going on there. I could go on about Wizz Air, but it's important to know that ALPA is actively working to oppose their zero tolerance policy for unions, the retaliatory terminations for attempting to organize, and refusals to comply with court orders to reinstate unlawful terminated employees. Additionally, ALPA continues to support pilots around the globe. Pilots groups have identified ongoing safety issues in several countries within the Asia-Pacific region. Just a few weeks ago, I met with the FAA's Flight Standards Office and the FAA's director in the Asia-Pacific region to share these concerns. In a couple of weeks in Singapore, we will be sitting down with the FAA along with the member associations in the Asia-Pacific region's leadership and us, and let's get to the meat of what's going on in that region. All of those carriers, whether it's Pakistan, Malaysia, Bangladesh, are now currently Category 2 with the FAA, and they are trying to get their Category 1 status. And we're pointing out the failures that are going on in those companies, much like what's going on in Wizz Air. Back home in the United States and Canada, the Air Safety Organization remains the cornerstone of ALPA. And schedule with safety has been our guiding principle for more than 90 years. Driven by more than 425 talented pilot representatives, the work of the ASO exemplifies ALPA's credibility, respect, and prestige within the aviation community. And when we speak with government and industry leaders about safety, security, pilot assistance, and jump seat issues, our voice is heard loud and clear. And while our representatives work on hundreds of safety, security, jump seat, and pilot assistance initiatives, today I'm going to focus on just a few of the top agenda items. The agenda, this agenda is reinforced by our ASO duty officers, an initiative spearheaded in 2019 that truly puts our ASO pilot volunteers in the day-to-day operations of the association, working alongside our professional staff. It has been a major force multiplier in advancing the line pilot's perspective with regulators and industry stakeholders by allowing subject matter experts at ALPA to quickly respond and literally be in the room if and when issues arise. Given the return to in-person meetings and conferences, this effectiveness of this program simply cannot be questioned. During this executive board, you will be considering new Section 85 policy change concerning the duty officers. I ask that you all consider this tremendous value of this program when addressing the resolution. Focusing on the ASO's Aviation Safety Committee, which is overseen by Captain Frank Bisonia and his Vice Captain Keith Phillips, the committee continues to represent the association in its work on numerous industry committees. A prime example of the work being done is what Joe referenced in the radio altimeters imposed by the interference caused by 5G mobile wireless deployment in the C-band. Much on this issue has occurred since the last time this body met, and I'm going to go into a little bit more details. Pilots have testified on Capitol Hill. The association has sent letters to legislative leaders, the Federal Communications Commission Chair, and the Department of Transportation Secretary. We have also been working very hard to ensure 5G in Canada is safely deployed without risk of interference to the radio altimeters. At every step, we have been advocating for a delay in the 5G rollout as ALPA and other aviation leaders offer to assist the wireless community in developing a comprehensive risk mitigation strategy that would address the effects of these proposed transmissions on our radio altimeters. In January, as the go-live date for 5G drew near, The wireless industry agreed to a voluntary 6-month delay in the deployment of 5G in close proximity to the airline airports, and to also limit power levels to ensure that the interference on approach and departure would be avoided. The wireless industry also started to share its deployment plans, which they had been held closely to their vest, which included details on many of the key signal properties that the FAA needed to evaluate the potential impacts on radar altimeters. As a result of the increased data from the wireless industry, the FAA was able to develop a process by which the radar altimeters and the aircraft that they are installed on can operate without risk to 5G signal interference. This process involves aircraft manufacturers submitting data on the interference rejection performance of the radar altimeters as installed in the aircraft. The FAA can then calculate a safety zone around each 5G transmitter outside of which the aircraft will not experience interference. Then, using 5G transmitter location provided by the wireless carriers, the FAA is able to determine which airports and runways are accessible without regard to a blanket airworthiness directive that prohibit Category 2, 3, and Autoland operations, as well as additional ADs on certain aircraft for additional limitations. This process, called Alternate Method of Compliance, or AMOC, was envisioned as a stopgap to allow the pathway to continue flight operations. However, as Joe stated, this process generates significant workload and requires pilots to know the make and model of their radar altimeters, and also to know whether their departure airport, arrival airport, or alternate airports are covered by the AMOC. Today, work continues to find a path forward that reduces pilot workload that the AMOCs have brought about. We have said repeatedly that the AMOCs are not an acceptable long-term solution, and that the new avionics will be needed. We have gone on record saying that Verizon and AT&T need to extend their voluntary restrictions beyond the current 6-month agreement. And if they refuse to do so, we expect the FCC to impose the limits as the spectrum regulator. Currently, ALPA is laser-focused on ending the use of AMOCs while avoiding any operational catastrophe when Verizon and AT&T are scheduled to end their voluntary restrictions on July 5th later this year. We have heard some positive news in the past few weeks. The FAA is finally meeting in person, downtown DC, and one of our ASO volunteers, Captain Keith Phillips, attended that meeting on behalf of ALPA. And in that meeting, in the past few weeks, the aircraft and avionics manufacturers have developed new filters for radar altimeters, and installations can begin soon. The filters will greatly improve the radar altimeter performance in the presence of 5G signals, and will demonstrate to the wireless industry that the aviation community is stepping up, which is one of their big concerns. They were saying, we weren't doing anything. We just said that they couldn't turn it on. But by showing them that we're actually moving forward once we get the data, figuring out that these filters are going to work, they're starting to see that this is a cooperative effort to move forward. The wireless providers have informally said, nothing written down yet, informally said that they would extend the voluntary restrictions if the aviation industry is making meaningful progress. But by no means is this fight over, and I hope to report additional progress regarding a long-term solution at our next meeting. The other major safety concern of this union, as Joe described, and indeed our profession is facing, is that of reduced crew or single pilot operations. That some manufacturers and airline managements are looking to reduce the number of flight crew members aboard today's aircraft, or possibly eliminate the physical presence from the flight deck altogether, is a direct threat to aviation safety. What they fail to realize is that, and we all know this, is that safety is our business. And thanks to the unmatched professionalism and dedication of every pilot flying today, air transport is the safest form of transportation in the world today. No computer or pilot in a remote setting can match an onboard pilot's skills, decision-making, and dedication to ensuring that each flight arrives safely to its destination. All you have to do is review the accounts of previous recipients of ALPA's Superior Airmanship Award to see the numerous examples of where the skills, knowledge, and abilities of the flight crews physically on the flight deck have made the difference between successfully averting a disaster and a senseless tragedy. We'll celebrate more of these pilots at the upcoming Air Safety Forum, which I'll touch on a little bit later. We know that our role as pilot in command, be it flying passenger or cargo, is on the flight deck. The safeguard of at least 2 well-trained, highly experienced, and well-rested pilots ready to silence the warning, fly the aircraft, and handle the emergency cannot be replaced. We are the most vital safety feature on any aircraft, period, and it's non-negotiable. With the increase of unruly passenger incidents, it's imperative that we continue to protect our aircraft and crew members from intentional harm. While these events have started to decrease to the near pre-mask mandate levels, they are still an ever-present threat, and we must always be ready. Many of our pilots serve as federal flight deck officers, as Joe talked about, and they are the last line of defense on our aircraft. The FFDO program, I'm proud to report, has surpassed 20 million missions, documented missions, earlier this year. Our deputized pilots who volunteer their time and talents to protect the flight deck fly these missions to guard against the potential of another tragedy like 9/11. Let me talk about that a little bit. I'm going to take a little break here. So the security folks got together, as Joe talked about, for a symposium. And Congressman Ellsby, if you don't know who he is, he's a Southwest pilot, but he's a new member of Congress, talked to us. And as Joe talked about, we were talking about how we get this increased funding. And we're not talking about a lot of money, as Congressman Ellsby said. What we're talking about is a rounding error on the amount of money that they deal with down here in Washington. But what he really told us was when he's talking to other members of Congress or staffers, he's frustrated because they don't remember what occurred on 9/11. Think about that the generation has moved on and the new decision makers did not know what happened. It's incredible. And that's what we're battling against. But since, like I just mentioned, since our last meeting, the association hosted 2 in-flight security symposiums with not only FFDOs in attendance, but also representatives from the FBI, the Transportation Security Administration's FFDO Program Office, and Federal Air Marshal Service. Thanks to both Captain Wolfgang Koch, the security chair, and his vice, Captain Darren Dorn, on their role in these symposiums' success. They are both tireless advocates for the FFD program and for the security of our aircraft, and I can't thank them enough. But they can't do it alone. And this is what we're talking about. It is a continuing struggle to get the administration to provide the appropriate funding for our FFDO program. FFDOs provide highly cost-effective protection, averaging just $25 a mission. Think about that, $25 a mission. With that in mind, the mission for pilot advocates at the upcoming legislative summit in June will focus on additional FFDO funding. Additionally, we will continue to press the administration on secondary barriers. In March, I met with the Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs to urge that the administration issue a final rule. These devices have proven effective in creating a physical barricade to prevent hostile individuals from reaching the flight deck when the flight deck doors open during flight. The FAA Reauthorization Act of 2018 included a mandate that the FAA issue a rule within 1 year requiring all newly manufactured aircraft to include a secondary barrier before they enter service. This key legislative directive from Congress is years overdue. Turning our attention to the Pilot Assistance Group, led by John Taylor and his vice, Travis Ludwig, all 6 of the pillars are continuing to work together to meet the needs of our pilots. Peer support continues to grow as a much-needed resource for our members, and our aeromedical structure has been working overtime on the numerous matters brought about by the pandemic, as well as expanding access to the individual service of ALPA's Aeromedical Office to our Canadian members. As you know, as part of ALPA membership, members in good standing can contact AMAS at no cost, and I'm delighted that our members, no matter where they live or work, can use this vital tool to safeguard their careers. Although we were hopeful that the worst days of COVID-19 pandemic are behind us, the ALPA Aeromedical volunteers continue to monitor updates worldwide. Furthermore, they contributed a significant amount of support to updating the industry's guidance document that summarizes current best practices, known technologies, and options for eliminating viruses and bacteria from our cockpits and contact surfaces. This update was completed just at the end of last year. Another area of focus is the Human Intervention Motivation Study, or HIMSS, an industry-wide effort in which managers, pilots, healthcare professionals, and the FAA work together to preserve careers and enhance safety. As I mentioned earlier in April, HIMSS held its annual conference here in Vallow, and HIMSS volunteers continue to build upon the work of providing a pathway for pilots to return to the flight deck. The HIMSS program has been proven to be particularly effective with a high rate of long-term absences, a low relapse rate, and a cost-benefit analysis showing a $28 return for every $1 spent on treatment. And Tim, as you're aware, we are in the early stages of developing a recovery program for our Canadian brothers and sisters that should produce the same type of results. And I know this team is ready and willing to help to get that moving forward. I appreciate all the work of our pilot assistant volunteers do in supporting our members, work that each and every one of them are passionate about. They really are. Recently, the Pilot Assistance Group took up a resolution to expand the support services of our retirees. Thank you, Delta, for bringing that to the Executive Council. And from a tradition of not leaving any of our fellow pilots behind in their careers or personal lives, I applaud the efforts and look forward to seeing what is on the horizon. And physically not leaving any pilot behind is the role of the Jump Seat Group led by Captain Rich Odbert and his vice Bob Spadia, who's here in the room. I want to personally thank them for all the work that they do on the Flight Finder app that Joe talked about. And as Joe talked about, addressed, there's been 1.5 million searches since its launch. Just fantastic work, Bob. Thank you. Now let's talk about the Air Safety Forum. I hope you guys are excited. I know I am. After a 2-year pandemic-induced hiatus, we will once again resume this forum this upcoming September, 12 through 15, at the Omni Shoreham in Washington, D.C., which I heard is a fantastic hotel. Held in conjunction with this next meeting, the Executive Board is going to be at this hotel, and so is the Air Safety Forum. We're all going to be together. We're going to recognize the achievements of our pilot volunteers and our superior airmen. We plan to hold two banquets. And because we want to recognize everyone properly. We have award winners and superior airmen from 2019, 2020, and 2021 to recognize. So we're going to have a banquet Tuesday night, and we're going to have the same banquet Thursday night. So put it on your schedules, and I hope you can be there. As each pillar of the ASO continues to do outstanding work and delivers exceptional results, I am truly honored to lead this organization and look forward to bringing everyone together at the Omni. With my remaining few minutes, I wanted to share some insights into my role as ALPA PAC Treasurer. This is good news. As you know, ALPA PAC is your political voice in DC and across the country. We are funded 100% by voluntary contributions from ALPA members living in the United States. All donations are used to educate decision makers in Washington, D.C., and build pilot partisan majorities in the House and Senate. Last October, I challenged the MEC chairs to increase participation among your pilot groups before the year was out, thanks to those who rose to the challenge. We finished 2021 in a stronger position than we expected. We capped out 2021 with more than $2 million raised and more than 12,000 ALPA PAC members. This is short of our all-time pre-pandemic high of 13,000 in 2020. But the growth seen towards the end of last year and the beginning of this year has just exceeded all of the new members from 2021. This year we set a goal for 2.3 million and a 22% member participation. And I'm confident that we'll reach and even surpass these figures. To date, ALPA PAC has received contributions from more than 11,500 ALPA members, representing more than 19% of the membership. So please continue to encourage your pilots to start contributing to the PAC. Even if it's just $5 a paycheck, their participation matters. ALPA PAC is the most bipartisan labor PAC in the country, counting conservative Republicans, liberal Democrats, and moderates of all stripes among its greatest allies. Party and ideology are irrelevant to the individual's support for partisan causes, and that has been of major importance over the past 2 years. As our concerns regarding various relief and stimulus bills were addressed, this was all done in large part due to the access the ALPA PAC provides. The PAC is the most effective tool we have for building and maintaining the relationships we need to win in Washington and educate the decision makers on pilot partisan issues. This election cycle, ALPA PAC has contributed more than $2.8 million to pilot partisan champions, split nearly 50-50 between both parties. My continued thanks go out to each and every one of your members who make this a priority. In closing, as I look at everyone present in this room, I feel confident in knowing all the work that our pilot representatives, volunteers, and staff do will keep this union in a position of strength. Collectively, continuing to build this strong trades union and watch the other pilots come. Thank you again for your time and attention this morning. Please fly safe.